Good evening, members of council and our viewing audience on YouTube. We're going to call the meeting to order. We'll have a moment of silent reflection and remain standing for O Canada. Thank you. Members of council, you've had a chance to look at items on the agenda. Is there any disclosures of conflict of interest? None noted. We have adoption of the minutes of the closed meeting of council and special meeting of council and regular meeting of council held November 10th, 2020 be adopted as presented. Deputy Mayor Meloche and Councillor Reno, all in favor. That carries unanimously. Thank you. We have no presentations, public meetings or hearings. We have delegations. Our first one is regarding 1381 Riom Road, a catch basin concern. And we'll go with the delegate. Is Mr. Mara, do you want to go first and then Mr. Swatman?
Yeah, so there is a delegate request here. Mr. Swatman should be available to join in. Okay, perfect. There we go. So I will start my presentation. For this, and this report tonight before you is in response to a request from a resident located at 1381 Riom. With respect to this resident's concern is with respect to the catch basin that is currently installed adjacent to his driveway on the town property. There has been some concerns that he has expressed through to the Public Works Department. We have reviewed this on a number of occasions, and we are unclear of what the concerns may be and what the solution might be. So before you tonight is a report to receive this request. The resident has requested to come before council as a delegation, and that is what we are doing tonight. From a town's requirement standpoint, we feel that the catch basin is sufficient. It is placed to provide drainage for the entire area. Certainly, there's an expression that the driveway does hold water during a heavy rainfall, which is probably not very uncommon amongst some of the other driveways in the areas. Driveways over time do settle and or as well with buildup of the grass and through freeze thaw. There is a difference in elevations from time to time. So certainly the report before you tonight is in essence the recommendation as part of the report is to receive this report. And with that, Mr. Mayor, I can hand it over to you if there's any questions or ask Mr. Swatman to go from there.
Thank you, Mr. Mara. Mr. Swatman, if you like to give us your presentation, and just a friendly reminder, you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Now, or do I wait?
We can hear you.
You can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. My problem is that the area drain in the front of my house is in the wrong location. It's 6 feet off of my edge of my driveway. And the way that it is landscaped, It starts about 20 feet from the west and goes all the way down to the drain. From the east, it's only 6 feet and it goes off of the east down to the drain, creating a big pit. It is deep. You can't have that kind of a grade. You've got to make it even like it is on my neighbors. My neighbors on either side, their drains are fine. But mine it's in a pit. The pictures you have on the report does not show elevation. Those are pictures that were taken standing up, and it looks fine until you come over and take a look at the depth of this. When I ride my lawnmower trying to cut the grass, it shoves me side to side. So I've got it when I've started just going to it and stopping and then going, and it still rocks me backwards. The only way to fix it, I asked if I could raise it 5 inches and then grade it a little bit so it wouldn't be so bad. I was told no. So the only solution that really would fix it is by taking that drain, moving it to the center of my lot, move it to the west by 15, 16 feet, and then grade it properly. But other than that, I don't know what to say, because I honestly believe it is hazardous.
Thank you, Mr. Swatman. I'll open it up to council questions, unless Mr. Mara has something to add. No? Okay. Council's pleasure. Councilor Akpata, then Deputy Mayor Malash.
Through your sewer to Mr. Swatnick. Sir, so I'm looking at the pictures right now, and I just want to make sure I understand. You're talking about moving it 15 feet, and from your perspective, that will eliminate the grading error, as you put it. Is that fair, sir?
Yes, if you move it 15 feet, then you can grade it from the east and west. The way it is right now, coming from the east, only being 6 feet from my driveway, I have the same drop in 6 feet that I have in 17 or 18 feet from the west.
Understood.
So it's a pit. It's a big pit.
I understand. Thank you, sir. You've clarified to make sure I understand correctly.
You're quite welcome. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you. Through you to Peter. I guess with the request coming from our delegate, is that even a possibility to actually move something like this?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Sir, through you, Mr. Mayor, what will end up happening through this, this catch basin has been in place for well over 7 years. This was part of that Ream Road Trail extension that was done about 7 to 8 years ago. So this catch basin was installed as part of that overall project. That catch basin is actually a manhole catch basin, so it's an access point into the storm sewer. So what will actually have to happen is that will have to become a manhole frame and cover, and certainly then a new catch basin would have to be installed to the west of this one, and a lot of regrading done. In the nature of cost, it's probably in the lines of about $10,000 to $15,000 to do something of that nature with respect to all the restoration that would occur, and things of that nature. So anything is certainly possible, but it will require some extensive work in that area. In Mr. Swatman's front yard. Certainly this is not an uncommon situation across the town, and we've had a number of concerns come forward with catch basins on the public right of way, and certainly doing this may review and open council to additional requests throughout the town. We have been successful to try not to get in and do a lot of extraneous work. It just would cause strain on our budgets from that aspect. So with that, it is possible. It just would come at a cost.
Additional, Crystal?
Yes, just supplemental on the report that you provided. You said there was another option, a viable option that's not being recommended at this time. However, I'm not really sure it's even really a viable option, because it sounds to me like to do the topsoil and the restore the seed, that would be something that we would have to continually update in order to keep that as a level piece of property. And like you said, that would be something we'd have to do at every property that has one of these, would it not?
Yes, certainly. if whatever we would decide to do at this location, it potentially would be requested at other locations. The option within the report is something with keeping that catch basin at its location. What that would do is create more of a divot than what is currently there, and that is exactly opposite what the resident would want. So I wouldn't recommend that option being carried forward. It was just something that was reviewed as put in here for some potential solution. We did not look and provide any sort of recommendation to move the catch basin, because again, that was an extraneous cost to do so. And certainly I believe this is the first time that I'm aware that there's a request to move the catch basin. So certainly the viable option is not really a viable option. It was an option just contained within the report in discussions with Public Works and the folks that were out there looking at it and trying to solve the solution or the problem of water sitting in the driveway. If water's sitting in the driveway and we raise the catch basin, that doesn't provide any solution to that either. So with respect to raising the catch basin, it would cause more water to sit around it and things of that nature. So we would be dealing with standing water for an extended period of time out there. So the information in the report was just an option for council to hear about.
Thank you.
Councillor Reno.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted clarification of something, Peter, that you said about it being an access cover. Does that mean if we were to move it, we'd actually have a second one installed because that's used for access? The other one would be used for drain. I just want a clarification on that. And the other question I have, we'll finish with that and then I'll ask my second question.
Yeah, certainly that top would be removed and a solid a solid cap top would be put on. So it would be a standard manhole frame and cover, which would be replaced on top of what is currently there. So underground, you wouldn't see any. At the surface, you'd only see a solid cap, such as a manhole frame and cover. And then a new catch basin would have to be put in and a connection cut into the existing sewer and things of that nature. So that would be another perforated grate like you see there. So yes, what you see there would become solid, solid steel cover, and there would be another one put in closer to the center of the property, I guess would be appropriate, and that would become a perforated catch basin grate.
Councillor Reno, supplementary.
Thank you, Peter. My question is for the delegate. Mr. Schwatman, it said in the report that you had a chance to do a little bit of digging, quite literally, and that you had a small trench put to that. Has that alleviated the water problem?
That has alleviated the water problem by me having to dig a little trench over to the catch basin. And I get rid of the water off my driveway that way. But as far as another cover being put there, you don't have to. All you have to do is cut it off and cap it below ground and move it. You don't need two places. I disagree with what he's saying.
Okay, I respect that. I think though, what he was saying is that there's infrastructure under there that needs to be accessed. So if we have workers that have to go into, they specifically have to go there to access the infrastructure. If we move the pot, then they have no way of accessing what's in that exact location.
They already have access on the other side of my driveway. There's already a manhole there. So we don't need two manholes within 30 feet.
All right, thank you.
Okay, council's pleasure. Deputy Mayor Malash.
I'd like to put a motion that we move with the recommendation presented before us this evening.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Malash. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Reno. On the recommendation that the report of Director of Public Works dated November 12th, 2020 regarding 1381 Riom Road catch basin concern be received. All in favor? Opposed, if any? It passes. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Swatman. Now we go to item D2, Richmond Court Subdivision Sidewalk. Mr. Mara, if you want to give us an introductory, and then we'll go to the delegates. Thank you.
Okay, I believe all the delegates, I see the names, I just don't see the cameras, but can I take access and share the screen? I'm going to use a bit of the, can everyone see figure 1 contained within the report on the screen right now?
Yes.
Yes.
So tonight's report is in response to a request for delegation from residents on Normandy Road. It's in response to a requirement for a sidewalk as part of the Richmond Court development that is proposed to be installed along the north side of Normandy between Richmond Court and 7th Street. So as you see in the diagram before you tonight, the sidewalk is shown in blue. So there is 2 pieces of sidewalk to be installed as part of the Richmond Court subdivision. So that is that small piece down Richmond Court, and then gets to Normandy and heads easterly from there to 7th. There is a second portion of a sidewalk for 3 lots that front onto Sovereign, and that comes down Sovereign and up to Normandy. So that is proposed to be installed, and a new pedestrian crossover would be provided at the intersection of Sovereign and Normandy, so that those residents and pedestrians that use those will be able to cross the road. This is a very typical situation of an infill development that the town over the last few decades has transpired to achieve throughout the town. As new developments come along, it is a very important aspect from both prior councils, this council, and administration to ensure that new developments are properly and safely connected from a pedestrian safety standpoint into the town's existing system of trails and sidewalks and things of that nature. It is a responsibility of both the administration to bring these recommendations forward to achieve those goals that past councils and this council has been promoting. The development on Richmond Court, which was done by T. Rowdy, was done in 2 distinct separate phases. So there was a severance agreement created. The 2 lots located at 2308 and 2316 Normandy was originally part of the larger parcel of property. When the developer came in and around the beginning of 2015, there was extensive environmental studies that needed to be done on the overall project in behind those properties that front onto Normandy. So the decision was made at that time in 2015, and in fact, the registration of the agreement occurred in December 2015, was to parcel off the 2 lots that fronted onto Normandy because the services were there and the road was present. So there was a severance agreement prepared at that time in 2015, December 2015, which created those 2 parcels. In that agreement, as it is noted and stated in the report, it does, at the time of that agreement, that was not a requirement for sidewalk on Normandy. The essence of an agreement is the responsibility of the developer to install items and to complete the servicing of the parcels of land, to create the lots and to provide an opportunity for the houses to be built. So we expedited this 2-lot severance from this agreement in 2015. In the process of doing that, the lots were created at that point in time. It was known that there was going to be a potential development behind them, but it was unknown of what the final results and configuration of the development behind them was going to be. We did know that certainly Richmond Court, there was going to be a road there. It didn't exist when the development agreement, the severance agreement occurred with the 2 lots. So we did know there was going to be a road, and the thought was we were going to provide 1 sidewalk down one side of Richmond and have another crossing at Richmond and Normandy. Given some of the experience that we have with pedestrian crossings and how they do cause some concerns with respect to providing safe pedestrian access and vehicles following it. As we progress through establishing the remainder of the subdivision, the sidewalk configuration proposed and shown on this figure in blue is what was finally shown. It was in fact in July of 2016, September of 2016, the developer knew what the extents of the overall sidewalks were going to be, and that is enclosed on this diagram here. So in this diagram here, this was prepared in September 27th, 2016. This does show a sidewalk on Sovereign Drive coming through up to Normandy. In fact, what we do show is a sidewalk coming along Normandy across 3 additional lots, crossing Richmond Court. At this time, it was called 6th Street. We show the one on 6th Street / Normandy at this location, Richmond, sorry, and then across on Normandy up and tying into this location. As we progress through this, this was known to the builder and the developer of 2308 and 2316 Normandy. This was known to them in and around this time frame. That is the same time frame of when the building permits were issued for the 2 corner lots there, with respect to 2308 and 2316. We did indicate to the builder and developer at that time that they needed to ensure that the property owners did have that information available to them. We do have written confirmation that that was provided, and that's all I have, and from the developer stating such to those 2 particular properties. With respect to the remainder of the 3 properties, so that would be 2320, 2330, and 2340 on Normandy Road. They were not privy to any sort of agreement with respect to this sidewalk. So there is no agreements part of this that would show any sort of sidewalk. Those were existing lots of record, and certainly past practice and past policies and procedures to provide that safe pedestrian access has always been developed and utilized in LaSalle to be able to provide new developments with safe pedestrian access to the existing trail system. You will notice that from the concept that was originally proposed, we did eliminate the piece of sidewalk across these 3 properties, 2260, 2270, and 2280. The reason being is we recognize that people walking from this area on Sovereign, it would be a long stretch for them to get all the way over to 7th and cross at the 4-way stop. This is a fully controlled intersection, and this is the best location to have crossings available. So we recognize that, and we allowed 1 pedestrian crossing on Normandy and eliminated the one here by providing this additional stretch of sidewalk. The reason being is this is 300 meters from about 7th Street to Normandy. If we did have this pedestrian crossing here, we would have 2 pedestrian crossings and an all-way stop within 300 meters of each other, causing a bit of concern with respect to traffic, pedestrian crossing, confusion with a bunch of signs, because there will be a whole bunch of signs out here that have to be pre-warning for as you approach the crossings. And in fact, not shown on here, but 200 meters to the east of 7th Street intersection, there is the crossing into Butermere Park as well. So within a half a kilometer, you potentially have 3 pedestrian crossings and 1 all-way stop. So the decision was made to realign this sidewalk and keep the sidewalk on Normandy coming out through here. Again, this is done for pedestrian safety initiatives. That is a very important aspect of what we do. It is something that is available and that the requirement of the developer to build. And it is also important to note that although these 2 lots, the agreement was prepared in 2015, the actual overall subdivision agreement was not completed until December 2017. 2 years after the severance agreement was prepared is when we finalized the agreement with the rest of the 9 lots within the subdivision on Richmond and the 3 lots on Sovereign. So with that, certainly there is a number of examples in the town that have had this. So in this particular example here, certainly there is 2 houses that were part of an agreement, and there was an extensive external sidewalk that comes along and crossed a number of houses in front and side yards. both on Delaware and in this house here on Michigan. Certainly this is one. It is put on town property. There is no requirement to have agreements to do work on town property. And certainly throughout the years, the town has implemented a number of things on town property without having agreements. So for instance, about 5 years ago, the town implemented transit service, and we ran transit service through a number of streets, and we installed bus stops along the way. All those locations in those streets where we have introduced transit service, we do not have agreements with any of those homeowners about transit service. Certainly, we put in bus stops adjacent or in front of people's houses in order to accommodate the greater good of the community as part of this overall aspect. This is a second example just outside here from Town Hall. Again, a development from Serenity Circle and a sidewalk extension on Ellis, which had to go across the side yard of this corner house on Ellis and Normandy. This one is over back behind the Rexall site, and this was a multi-residential development, and this one involved trails. So there was a number of external trails that had to be constructed through and across houses that fronted onto Orford and also onto Sprucewood. As part of that, certainly, here's another one over in the Ville Maria and Cousineau area, and this one here is the Naples development just on the other side of Normandy here, just outside of Town Hall. There was an extensive sidewalk that was installed as part of that across five existing houses and a corner commercial property. Certainly, what's before you tonight is long-standing information relative to what the town has done in the past with respect to these small infill developments and trying to provide that safe pedestrian access for the new property owners to connect with the existing sidewalk and trail system. With that, Mr. Mayor, I would pass it off to yourself and the delegates, and for you to hear what the delegates have, and then once the delegates are completed, I can provide the closure to my report.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. We'll go to the delegates, and I'll just remind the delegates when you start your 5-minute presentation, please state your name and address for the record. And we'll have our clerk on the 5-minute timer, and we'll go with Mr. and Mrs. Piccolo, Mr. and Mrs. Rowdy, and then Diane Wilson and Craig Stevenson in that order. So Mr. and Mrs. Piccolo, if you're ready to give us your presentation, thank you. You're still muted. There you go.
Hello? Hello?
We're good.
Okay, good. So I'm Elena Piccolo. My husband is away on business, so unfortunately he can't be present tonight for the meeting. I live at 2316 Normandy. So, and I am one of the two lots on Normandy that were part of the original agreement that existed for the project here on Richmond Court. We're not part of Richmond Court, but we are on Normandy. So our home was constructed in 2016. We moved in 2017. So May 10, 2017. We were not aware of any sidewalk construction on our home because actually that was probably all in negotiations, I understand. So we were not made aware of that. So the decision to build our home on our lot was with the premise that there were no sidewalks coming across our front lawn. Being that Normandy already has a mile long of sidewalks on the north side of thing, and part of the agreement that we refer to in the developing agreement of December 1815 refer to section 10, and it does say that the agreement says there are no requirements for the sidewalk for these two lots on Normandy. Now, you know, I built my home, and we built it on the premise that there was no talk of sidewalks, and we asked our builder if there was at the time, and they said no, because Richmond Court was still being in development. They didn't know, and this was after the fact. We found out about the sidewalks in 2018 casually. It was not, you know, brought to our attention till then. The issues we have with the sidewalk is, number one, security issues. The sidewalk would literally be at our front door, and feel very, you know, unsafe about that. Number one. Number two, the sidewalk that is being proposed to accommodate 6 homes on Richmond Court. And these 6 homes, the likelihood of them using this sidewalk to walk from Richmond Court to 7th Street is very unlikely. So I can't imagine that the town of LaSalle is very worried about a 5-stretch home to accommodate Richmond Court when there are multi-locations in the town of LaSalle that are in dire needs of sidewalks for safety, where people are walking on roadside with safety jackets for their safety. So it just doesn't make sense why 5 homes on Normandy are being targeted for this project. I just don't understand it. On top of that, you know, if we had known, we probably would not have built on Normandy. I mean, with the traffic flow now, the sidewalks, it's become, you know, I probably would not have built on Normandy had I have known this. Now, the sidewalk that does exist is beautiful. I don't understand why this section is being targeted of 5 homes on the opposite side of the road, when it clearly says in the original agreement that no sidewalks are required. And I'm not a lawyer, but I don't understand how the interpretation of the town that they can disregard that original agreement. So I completely oppose of the sidewalk project, and I remain with that. I'll pass it on.
Thank you, Mrs. Piccolo. I did omit Mr. and Mrs. LaPera, so I see you there, Joe. Sorry about that. We'll continue with all the delegates, and then we'll entertain questions after that and any remarks from Mr. Mara. So Mr. and Mrs. Rowdy, please.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
Yes, Mr.
Yes.
Rowdy.
Okay, good. So I'm David Rowty. I'm at 2320 Normandy. I've been asked to also speak for Dr. Bachia, my neighbor, at 2330, I believe is his correct address on Normandy, next door to me to the east. I'm going to present his issues to you quickly. If you take consideration of his home being the oldest existing home that's in question, and his grade situation, if you're familiar with it at all, his grade situation is actually quite high. If a sidewalk is brought through his property at a pitch that's appropriate to the height of the curb, then he'll have a grade issue of probably about 14 inches from what I can calculate myself. I'm not an engineer, but about 14 inches of grade will have to be modified at his home. And he has a concern about that because he doesn't even understand what that means. And to be honest, he's got a couple of health concerns that he's been going through, and the gentleman probably would be better to do without the stress and concern about how it affects his property for a sidewalk that he's happy to forego and walk across the street and use the trail. I invite anybody who might be familiar with the doctor to check my comments with him. Speaking for myself, and it's almost tongue in cheek to even talk like this, because the only way that I can speak to this almost is is if it's selfish and how it pertains to my property alone. And I don't want to make it just about my property. But the fact is that I had an option available to me, for instance, where I could have set my house further back when I was building, had I known there was any kind of a consideration for this. And I might have, not knowing whether or not I'd have to deal with it. Well, I'm dealing with it now anyway. But I'm definitely concerned about it going across my driveway and across my front yard, because I think aesthetically, it's terrible. To be perfectly honest, I think that the trail is more than abundant for all the traffic that I see. And I'm making a very, honest observation. We live here, we see the traffic on the trail, and the traffic on the trail is more than just generous. It's actually pleasant, because I meet people I've never known before in the town by walking the trail, just by going across the street. And it's not just my neighbors, people from everywhere. And the trail is great for that reason, because it brings more than just an opportunity for people to walk. It brings unity in the community. That said, the trail is great because of the health factor, and people can benefit very much by having access. So I'm not anti-sidewalk, but I would like to mention that, echoing my neighbor at 2360's sentiments, Elena Piccolo, there's places that have no such service at all of infrastructure, where they're in terribly dire need. And I'll use the example of Bouffard Wind between Malden Road and Disputed. I travel this road on a pretty regular basis in my course of travel just for work normally. And I travel that road several times a day. I can tell you, the police are actually very diligent in monitoring that road. And they can probably even echo the same sentiment. The fact is, there is a ton of pedestrian traffic on that road. And it's usually the residents of that neighborhood directly. And most of them are actually fairly elderly. And you know what they do when they walk down that road and traffic is coming? They stop, they turn, and they wait, because it's actually kind of a dangerous walk to go down that road. And I realize that, there's more of a commitment financially to get a sidewalk over there. I realize it's not an equivalent scenario to what we're talking about here tonight, but I'm saying that there's needs to be consideration where it probably ought to be focused more so. There's people that are there that, and culverts are in about maybe, if I had to guess, I would say at least 30% of the road. Culverts are in on one side. A sidewalk could go in, I'm sure. There's got to be a way, but eventually, maybe, but in the meantime, those people are walking down a street with stone next to a ditch, and they're elderly, and I kid you not. In fact, I invite you to, check it out for yourself sometime. You can catch somebody walking down that road almost any time of day. And what else would I like to say about it? Well, I wanted to make another point and I can't remember now, and I'm stuck to my 5 minutes. So I guess I'll just end it off there.
If I can just interject, the biggest concern for me is safety. I walk my dog all the time. I still took.
Excuse me. Can you give us your name and?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Maria Rowdy.
Okay.
I'm 2320 Normandy, and I'm always on the trail. I'm always out front. We have a small dog. And the biggest concern for me is safety. And I think that's what we're all presenting this evening. But I would, I don't understand why the town maybe wouldn't put more crosswalks along Normandy. People speed down the street. I understand the concerns, but, if we look where the trail, like you guys are no longer, proposing the trail in front of the other homes, but you have a whole neighborhood of people in Sovereign, that would access that. As Elena, mentioned, our neighbor, that it only affects, a couple of people, 6 homes in Richmond, and then our properties. And I can guarantee all 4, I can speak on 4, the 4 properties in front of our home, our neighbors. Nobody wants the sidewalk. It's more of safety, people being able to be, right next to your front door. And again, if we would have known there was a sidewalk coming in, I don't think that we would have built here. And that is the honest truth. This is an afterthought, and one of the things that, in regards to the council, men and women there. So the 2 lots that are, the 2 lots that Tony Rowdy developed, and then our lot, Dr. Baccia and La Pera, those were all existing homes. So the town is paying for the sidewalk to go in front of my house, Dr. Pagia, and the LaPera's house. That's what I was told. And I did speak with Tony Rowdy, and he said that he would be willing, whatever he's being charged for the sidewalk, he's willing to take that money and, put it wherever the town sees fit, as my husband gave the example for Buford. So I thank you for your time and your consideration to our concerns. Dr. Bachia is watching live on YouTube. He wasn't able to access Zoom. So I just wanted to let everyone know that as well.
Thank you, Mrs. Rowdy. And now we'll go to Diane Wilson and Craig Stevenson. Just name and address for the record, please.
There. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we're good. Thank you.
Did you hear me when I gave my name?
No.
Craig Stevenson, 2308 Normandy, and also Diane Wilson is here with me.
Thank you.
So the presentation that I made in writing to council and to you, Mr. Mayor, I outlined the severance agreement that was entered into with regard to our property. And specifically, that's a separate and distinct agreement from any development agreement that was entered into for the Richmond Court subdivision agreement. That agreement stands on its own 2 feet. And as I pointed out, and you can certainly see it under section 3.12, the town agreed there would be no sidewalk in front of my house on Normandy. And in section B of the same section, the town pointed out that it was very important that the existence of a sidewalk on Richmond beside my house was pointed out to me and any subsequent purchaser. So the town clearly contemplated sidewalks when that severance agreement was entered into. Now, I've heard Mr. Mara say, well, things weren't finalized. My submission to you is things were finalized with my parcel of land. And there's a written agreement that says that. Secondly, after that agreement was registered in December of 2015, our agreement, there was no amendment made by the town to take into account what they were negotiating with Mr. Rowdy in Richmond Court. And an amendment is what gives notice to a subsequent purchaser if it's registered on title. That was not done by administration. Thirdly, section 8.8 of our severance agreement says that any notice is to be given not only to the clerk of the town, but also to the owners of 2308 Normandy and to the Piccolos next door. And that was not followed by the administration either, because we got no notice from the town as to what they were doing with regard to this sidewalk. We had to go and find out. And I still have not seen an as-built drawing for what they plan on doing. I saw the diagram figure 1 that was produced by Mr. Mara, and it doesn't have the detail as to where precisely the sidewalk is proposed to be built on Normandy. And the thing that I noticed about the submission made by administration was there's no discussion or disclosure of why the provision was put into my agreement that there's no sidewalk. They're just like, well, you know, there's no reasoning given, but there had to be consideration given given the size of our lot, the closeness to the road, the type of development that was being proposed, it was agreed by the town that there would be no sidewalk. So I guess the last point that I want you to consider is safety, because it's been suggested that having a sidewalk in front of our house to go back to the stop sign some 600 or 700 meters to the east is a safe way of providing access for the people on Richmond Court. What I have asked, I'll ask you to consider is how safe is it for the people who are traveling west on this proposed sidewalk, coming from 6th Street, the stop sign, coming from the trail, and they see a new sidewalk. So they walk down that sidewalk, just like they would walk down the trail. And they get to the end of the sidewalk at Richmond, and where do they go? Richmond is a dead-end street. So you have all these people being funneled down the sidewalk, potentially, and that is creating a trap for the unwary, because the only thing they can do is turn around and go back 700 or 600 meters or cross the street, which is exactly what's going to happen.
Mr. Stevenson, if I could ask you to sum up, please. I already gave you 40 seconds over.
Yes, thank you. So what's being proposed with this sidewalk on Normandy is actually unsafe for the pedestrians. And those are my submissions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. Mr. and Mrs. LaPera.
There you go. I'm unmuted.
There you go, Joe. Thank you. And your name and address for the record, please.
Joe LaPera, 2340 Normandy.
Thank you.
Good evening, Your Worship, council members, and the administration. I think with all the other delegates indicating all their points of view, I don't have anything to add, anything more to those points, other than the safety concern that I see. I think with the, I think Craig was touching on it a little bit there about the safety concerns of people using the north sidewalk, which is the proposed sidewalk. I see that a lot of the residences that will be coming from Richmond, 50% of those people are going to go east and 50% of those people are going to go west. I mean, it's just logical. Like, we can't predict anything more than probably 50% are going to go east, 50% go. So my concern is that the people that are going to go east out of Richmond, they're going to walk down the proposed sidewalk. They're going to get to the crossing at 7th, which is in front of my house. And then they're going to cross the road and they're going to get on that southbound sidewalk. They're going to go, depending on where they want to go from there, they're going to go east on Normandy or go to the Brunette Park. I appreciate that. This is a good solution for those people. But the other 50% of the people that might want to go west, they're going to come to Richmond at Normandy. Now, I honestly don't think that those people are going to go east, go to the stop sign at 7th, then come all the way back. Let's say if they wanted to walk to Shoppers or to the bank or something. I believe that all those people are going to cross at Richmond, which is like a big safety concern there. Now you got all these people that are going to be crossing at Richmond without a crosswalk there. I propose maybe something to look at. Could the situation for the Richmond people and the situation for the 3 lots on Sovereign, could those be brought into one crossing between them and only affecting possibly 3 of the houses west of Richmond on Normandy's north, as opposed to the 5 houses that are in front of all these delegates' homes? You're affecting 5 homes instead of, 3 homes instead of 5, but you're also only have one crossing, one pedestrian crossing there, which would probably eliminate all the concerns that council has, along with Peter and the administration, in terms of how to get people safely across that road. That's what I would propose, maybe to look at a situation where there's one crossing versus people going east, people going west, people trying to figure out what they do when they come down this sidewalk, as Craig was indicating. I think those are bigger concerns that might be solved by possibly one crossing at Normandy and Richmond. Thank you. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. LaPera. Now we'll open it up to Mr. Solani and or Mr. Mara for any comments before we go to council members.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to try to share my screen again. I have some commentary relative to some of the information that was shared. So certainly, hopefully you can see figure 1 again. Yes, that's correct. So there is 8 houses on Normandy. The sidewalk will service 8 houses on Normandy, and it will service the 5 houses that are the delegates tonight. So that's in essence what this sidewalk will provide service for. There is certainly no indication of the town trying to do any targeting per se. We are working within the confines of what we have done in the past relative to developments and infill developments, and try to provide these locations. The notion of other roads in town that need sidewalks, certainly council is aware of that, administration is aware of that, and we are working on a pedestrian safety initiative, and that should be coming to council soon. Certainly, we all know the struggles on a lot of those areas. And with respect to any of those areas, just trying to put a sidewalk in there without having any sort of agreement on any of those houses, council will probably be faced with the same concerns coming forward from those residents, certainly in those streets. Some may want it, some may not want it. And certainly it is a tough road ahead for council in the town in trying to continue to expand our sidewalks through those areas that are rural in nature, that don't have curb and gutter. Certainly this proposed sidewalk, everything that is shown here is developer paid. It's not paid for by the town. Certainly the developer may wish to provide a cash contribution for this, but there is no mechanism in our privy to take that and use it elsewhere from that aspect. So certainly, again, council and few of the members of council here tonight are aware of some of the struggles that we have on Bufar, particularly between Malden and Disputed, with the absence of a sanitary sewer and a proper road. Certainly, that is a prime location for sidewalks, but certainly there is a significant cost expenditure for that. With respect to this being a trap, certainly that is a concern. Certainly that would be something that somebody may happen to do for the first time when they come down this section of new sidewalk and get to Richmond. Certainly a solution to that is not to remove the sidewalk, but to continue the sidewalk up to Sovereign, and that way they can cross over Normandy at Sovereign. Certainly, if that is a concern for safety of those people who do that for maybe the first 3 or 4 times that they aren't used to what the sidewalk goes to, certainly not removing the sidewalk. Again, you can look at it as a solution to remove the sidewalk, but certainly extending the sidewalk further across the 3 houses and providing this as the pedestrian crossing certainly would be appropriate. I think one of the notions is to take this sidewalk and bring it back this way, provide a crossing someplace here and bring this one this way. There is concerns with that with respect to a crossing. Again, mid-block crossings are not the idea. People turning out of these intersections when they come here, if there is somebody crossing and they're not stopped and they're making the turn, trying to beat a car that they may see, it provides some significant concerns. We try to place these crossings at true mid-block, well away from intersections or close to intersections the best we can. So certainly that is an option, but again, you would be dealing with another 3 different residents if this was removed. And certainly there is no agreement on these 3 residents to put any sidewalk through here. It's very important to note that, again, at the time of writing the severance agreement in 2015, it is clear in the report that the final details were not known. We did know, again, we would put Richmond in and there'd be something on one side of Richmond, but we didn't have all the final details on how the interconnections would occur between that proposed sidewalk. And certainly that is why within that severance agreement, again, if you read the section, it says at the time of execution of the agreement in 2015 to create those lots, there was a notation in there that there was no sidewalk required on the north side. But subsequent to that, the agreements pretty much remain silent on anything that could and would happen on public right-of-ways going into the future. Again, this is on a bus route. I mentioned buses earlier. If the town increases the number of buses or frequency, you're going to see increased numbers of buses on Normandy. And certainly that's not covered in any sort of agreement along Normandy with any of the houses and things of that nature. So with that, that concludes my discussion. Mr. Solani may have some additional description to provide for this report.
Your Worship and members of council, I just want to add a couple of comments and pieces of information for council with respect to this matter. As Mr. Mara indicated, the development agreement that was for the two lots makes reference to the fact that the current policy at that time of council was to only have sidewalks on one side of a collector road. And it makes reference to the fact that it's at the time of the execution. And as a result, the developer at that time wasn't required to build the second sidewalk on the north side. Subsequent to that, in the fall of 2016, there was the application for the Richmond Court Subdivision, which is an 11-lot development. And at that time, there was a public meeting under the Planning Act, and there was a staff report provided to council dated November 17th, 2016. And in that staff report, the following recommendation was made to council at the time. I'll just read that briefly. The applicant will also be required to construct new sidewalks in front of the lots that are being created on Sovereign Drive and along portions of the north side of Normandy to interconnect with existing sidewalks and trails to the east and to the south of this development. These interconnections are required for pedestrian safety purposes. The exact location of these pedestrian interconnections will be set out in the final set of approved engineering plans and will be included in the corresponding subdivision agreement. So that was November 17th, 2016. There was a public meeting with respect to the 11-lot subdivision. At that time, council concurred with the staff recommendation, and those recommendations then formed the basis for the subsequent agreement. So the second agreement was then prepared and was executed in December of 2017 for the Richmond Court Subdivision. It is in that agreement that there is the obligation now to construct the sidewalk in front of the 5 homes on Normandy. That's before you this evening. So that was dealt with as part of the council decision to approve the Richmond Court Subdivision, where there was the reassessment of the need for additional pedestrian interconnections at that location. And council in 2016 concurred with that recommendation. And that's why the change took place. And what is important to remember is that the 2015 agreement doesn't say that there will never be a sidewalk. It just says that at that time, the person that was developing those 2 lots didn't have an obligation to build the second sidewalk. It just says it's acknowledged that no sidewalk is required to be constructed along the subject lands, meaning that the person that's developing those 2 lots was not obligated to do so. But it doesn't preclude council at some future date, including 2017, to enter into another agreement with Richmond Court Subdivision to then put in that sidewalk because it was determined at that time it was necessary. That's no different than what happened on Orford Street. That's no different than what happened on Villa Maria and all the other examples that Mr. Mara presented in the staff report. That happens very common in LaSalle over the years, where you have an interface between existing streets and new streets, and there's a need to then make these connections from streets that don't have sidewalks or don't have them on both sides where it's necessary, and where the new development that's taking place. So this is not any different than any of those previous situations. And there's probably many more than 5 that we can bring forward, but Mr. Barr highlighted those. So I think it's important to conclude by saying that your professional engineering staff and your professional planning staff recommended in 2016 as part of the staff report that was presented at the public meetings that this is necessary, and the reasons for that are explained by Mr. Mara. And today in 2020, we are of the same mind that from a overall safety point of view, we believe this is in the town's best interest to have this additional piece of sidewalk built on the north side for the reasons already stated.
Thank you, Mr. Solani. Before we open to questions, I'm just going to ask our solicitor, Mr. Dudal. We talk a lot this evening, questions, statements were made in relation to legal documents. And suggestions were made by some of the delegations that we should put sidewalks where people require them. Legally, do we need any legal document to put sidewalks on our property in front of anyone's home, whether it's Normandy, Bouffard, Lafferty, any street?
I mean, certainly it is a municipal right of way, and it is our land, given that it would affect residents. And I know there was a notice clause that was pointed out by Mr. Stevenson in section 8.8 of this agreement in terms of changes to that agreement. Obviously, it could come to council, but at the end of the day, I believe it's the town's decision and council's decision to, if we wish to go forward with a sidewalk, we're able to do so. And it's our land that we're able to put that in, especially for a safety initiative, as this one clearly is, then we have the right to do that.
Okay, thank you. I'll open it up to Cal. Did you want to add to Mr. English? Okay, sorry. Council members. Mr. Reno, then Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question is for Peter Mara. Peter, can you give any insight to the comment about Mr. Bechet's front yard and the 14-inch in drop? Can you give us any perspective on that?
Yeah, so certainly we have been explaining that to the consultant engineer who was responsible to come up with the design. They had, again, they were about to review that, then the request to come to delegation was made, so they have held off on that. If the sidewalk proceeds, there will have to be some work done in that particular instance on how that sidewalk is going to be put in. And that is ultimately all part of the cost of the developer to doing so. So certainly that will have a bit of a grade change. We've had these situations before where we have worked through them and found an appropriate way to deal with it. We would have to involve that resident, but we never came up with a proposed final solution yet because of this request for delegation. So certainly that will be something that has to be worked through the final details if the sidewalk stays with the developer's engineer and meeting with that resident to find a final proposed final solution for that grading issue.
Thank you, Peter.
Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Mara. So when I'm looking at this, and I actually travel this area very often, I use the trail system that comes out of Sovern, and we cross over, unfortunately, in the middle of Normandy to get to that trail system to head back towards 7th Street. I guess I'm trying to figure out why maybe we didn't consider putting our sidewalk in front of 2260 through 2280 and allowing there just to be that area there with one crosswalk. Just because I agree 100% on safety and finding the easiest way for people to cross. But I guess my concern is with this, it's only serving those small people of the Richmond Court area. And we always suggest people who are biking or rollerblading or doing any of those other things to make sure that they're on our trail system, not on our sidewalks. So I'm not really seeing that there's a benefit to this little system that's being put in front of those 5 homes. I would rather see us I know we're trying to avoid an additional pedestrian crossing, but I'd rather see us put in a second crossing right there at Richmond to allow those people to cross over to our trail system where it's more user friendly. It's not just for walking. And I don't know, I know you didn't recommend that. Is there what's the main reason we don't want to consider that second crossing?
Mr. Martin.
So if I can share the screen once more, I think there was 2 questions there about why we didn't carry it through here. The thought, Deputy Mayor Malash, was we were putting this in, these 2 lots were owned by the developer and were being built by the developer for homeowners. So the thought is because these were being built and the indication from them was that they were going to notify those potential buyers. Doesn't sound like that occurred. It's unfortunate that did not occur. So coming through here, we would have had these folks within Richmond and these 2 houses here on Normandy having notification, and to complete the rest of the way through was the indication. So we would be, in essence, the thought was we would be disturbing 3 houses here or 3 houses here. We did not carry through here with respect to that. There was less landscaping here at the time. Again, these houses were being built. This one was vacant at the time. And certainly the requirement of the agreement, and this is an important note, that the agreement for Richmond was registered in 2017. There's a 2-year clause in there, and we have been chasing the developer since 2019 to get the sidewalk in. They kept on delaying, and we have a number of instances where we have struggled with getting developers to comply with the agreements, where we have stepped in and completed some of that work for them on behalf of them with their securities. The particular instance of the sidewalk, we did not step in and do that. So we were actually chasing the developer since September 2019, because that was the 2-year clause on the sidewalk for the Richmond court. So certainly if that was done in 2019, there would be a lot less landscaping for them to deal with and things of that nature here. With respect to the number of crossings, again, we were trying to minimize the crossings the best we can at Normandy. I think you brought up a point that you come in from Sovereign back here. So certainly there's probably a need eventually at some point in time. There's a pathway up here off of Sovereign that ties in. So eventually at some point in time, I would envision a need to prepare this and extend this through here. With respect to, these sidewalks are meant for pedestrians for walking purposes. They're not meant for biking. Again, people on these local roads, these are slow moving roads. They're going to have the ability to get in there and ride their bikes on the road. When they get to Normandy, there is bike lanes on the road. Bikes should be on the road. They should be following the Highway Traffic Act, stopping at stop signs, proceeding on with that instance. So if you're talking about bikes on the road, they should be following those rules of the road under the Highway Traffic Act. That is ultimately their requirement, to stop at the stop sign. If they wanted to proceed easterly, they would do a left-hand turn out of Richmond or a left-hand turn out of Sovereign and follow the rules of the road to get into the bike lanes on Normandy. I hope that answered your question. It was a bit long-winded, but again, we thought we were taking the path of least resistance through here with a couple additional houses who were supposed to be notified, but it does not sound like they were notified. And certainly this was vacant at the time. These 2 were existing at the time of the agreement and pushing some of this forward. So certainly, again, extending the sidewalk back through here is probably a good idea as well. It wasn't brought forward as part of the solution, but certainly to eliminate some of those concerns relative to a trap and people getting here, not knowing what to do, bring them back here and provide one crossing. The notion of number of crossings, you would have one here at Sovereign, you'd have one here at Richmond, you have another one here at Normandy, you have another one here at Brunette. And if you look at the number of signs you need for these crossings, there's going to be a number of signs as you approach this here. As you approach this crossing, if we have one here, there'll be a number of signs as you approach this crossing, which is going to go in regardless, and vice versa. Going the opposite way, you have a number of signs as well. So certainly again, multiple crossings. We're trying to compile and sort them out. Again, if council ever wishes to upgrade crossings to the push button stoplights, investing $80,000 into one as opposed to $80,000 into two of them, it's a bit easier for that type of notion to occur in the future if upgrades to pedestrian crossings occur and allow us to spread some of that those funds out to better upgrade some of these in the future if council so wishes.
Supplementary.
Yes, so just continuing on that, because you've mentioned we decided not to go to the 3 houses on the left. Instead, we went to the 5 houses on the right, 2 being included. There looks to me like there's a lot of landscaping or driveway design that our sidewalk would go through. Is that being kind of, is that going to ruin what's currently there? Or is that all on their property that this won't interfere with what's going on?
Mr. Mara.
Sorry. The landscaping that is there is on town property. The notion of what would have to be moved is part and parcel of what the developer would be responsible for. Again, we reached out to the developer when 2308 and 2316, the 2 lots that were subject to their severance agreement, and had advised them saying the more landscaping and driveways you let go in, the more cost it's going to cost you to put in this sidewalk later. We've tried to reach out to them and get them that information and have them communicate that. Again, that was their choice to let some of this to go. Certainly 2320, Mr. and Mrs. Rowdy's house, that was just completed as well. And they completed the landscaping. So yeah, so certainly there is landscaping regardless of which way we go on Normandy. There's landscaping all the way through there. Anything that would be removed is being removed on town property. We would only install the sidewalk on property that is owned by the town, not on private property.
Thank you.
I'll just take this time before we go to Mr. Carrick, just to remind council, that's why we have new developers agreement where the sidewalks, trail systems, rear yard drainage, et cetera, goes in first. So we don't deal with these issues as we have on other streets as well. So Mr. Carrick.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple of things. First of all, I support sidewalks. I've been on council since 2000, so to speak, and we thought whenever sidewalks go in that weren't exactly as planned or perceived, there's always issues. Nobody wants them, and I can appreciate their comments, but at the same time, I still support sidewalks. I guess the comments I have, and I want one to Mr. Solani, is going back to that report that council agreed with, saying that this is what was supposed to happen. I don't think I was part of that. Can you just refresh my memory again?
Yeah. In 2016 is when the public meeting took place with respect to the 11 lot Rowdy / Richmond Court subdivision. So that went forward to council. There was a staff report November 17th, 2016, and it was the report that dealt with the 11 lot subdivision. It's within that report where staff provided the recommendation that I just read earlier in terms of the need to provide that interconnection at that location along the north side. So that was in November of 2016.
Okay, so having said that, so council basically agreed with that, and then I'm of the mind that we should also do the 3 lots that are heading back up toward the town center. That makes a lot of sense if you want to put the crosswalk up at Normandy and Sovereign, because that would alleviate a lot of Richmond even turning that way going toward Mr. LaPera's house and the other ones. They would actually be able to cut back up and go across and then cross at the crosswalk rather than going all the way down, unless they wanted to use the trail. But that still would make a viable option. And I think we should seriously look at putting the 3 sidewalks there so it's all connected. So it really breaks up the activity. And that makes sense to me, and I would support that. Thank you.
Mr. Carrick, are you making that as a motion?
Sure, I'll make that as a motion.
Okay, so on the recommendation that's before us, it doesn't speak west of Richmond. Oh, Mr. Militia has a point of order, I believe.
Sorry, just if I could perhaps make the request that We deal with the current recommendation, and then if there is additional sidewalks that council would like administration to look at, to come back with a report on additional sidewalks on those 3 lots or any other lots for that matter on Normandy, just so that we can separate the 2 issues out. Please, thank you.
Okay, I'll withdraw the motion, other than the fact that should happen sooner than later, so we're not doing this down the road forever.
Okay, just so I could be clear, Mr. Carrick, are you saying you're recommending the motion as presented? You're muted, sorry.
Yes, I will. Yes.
Do we have a seconder? Councilor Reno, you have a question, or are you seconding the motion?
I would like to say that, like Councillor Carrick, I support sidewalks in general. I mean, safety is very important. And although there is, excuse me, although there is sidewalks on the other side, there's a trail on the other side, there's still a lot of activity on the north side of the street. I believe in sidewalks. I believe that the sidewalks should be there. And I believe that my question would be to Peter, you know, I understand why people don't want sidewalks. I want them for safety, but they don't want them for aesthetics. And I understand that. If somebody was to come to me after the fact and say they're going right in the middle of my front yard, I'd be upset too. And in the past, we have been able to work with the positioning of that sidewalk. Peter, can you tell me at this point where the sidewalk is supposed to go? Is it going to be right on the lot line, putting it 15 feet up their front yard, or is there some way that we may be able to mitigate that? I see there's no street trees or anything, and knowing that the trail seems to be closer on the other side of the street, can we possibly get some type of relief for these residents?
Certainly, thank you. With respect to the location of the sidewalk, there is a major hydro line that goes down the north side of the road. The sidewalk would hug the back of those hydro poles. In some instances, those hydro poles veer back and forth between the back of the curb, and there's not enough sufficient room between the curb, the back of the curb, and the existing hydro poles. So it would hug the back of the hydro poles as tight as we can. There is a requirement to have, from a minimum maintenance standards, a minimum of 16 inches clearance of barriers and things along the side of the sidewalk, so that people walking don't trip on things. So we would have to try to maintain and keep that the best we could. But that's in essence how we would have to try to fit this one in. Those hydro poles are not consistent all the way through. In the essence of trying to put the sidewalk right up against the back of the curb. Every driveway you come up to, there'll be a little bit of a dip-de-doo, and you get into a bit of that's my technical term, by the way, dip-de-doo. But certainly you get into accessibility issues because we exceed that 5% threshold for wheelchair and accessibility needs when we approach driveways when we're at the back of the curb, because that is where it drops the most. So we run into those issues when we're trying to do it along the back of the curb. But from a proposed location, we're trying to hug and be as close to the back of the hydro poles as we can.
And supplementary, those hydro poles are 15 feet? Whereabouts are they?
Those hydro poles, again, I'm going to say the center of the pole, the distance between the pole and the curb could be anywhere from 5 to 6 feet. In some locations, it varies in between that all the way through. I don't have an exact measurement, but I know it kind of fluctuates between probably, I would say between 4 and 7 feet. So at this particular location, I don't know the exact number of where they are, but if you're out there to try to visualize it, it'd be at the back of the hydro poles.
Okay, I appreciate that answer. I will second the motion, knowing that they're not going way up 15 feet, way up near the home, knowing that they're going to be 9 feet from the road at the worst. I will second Councillor Carrick's motion.
Okay, Council, we have a mover and seconder. Any questions on the motion, on the motion before Councillor Akpata?
Just a point of clarification for myself, Your Worship. I found the discussion of a crosswalk at Richmond to cross Normandy compelling. Just looking at what we're doing now. So to make sure I understand, it'd be the proposed blue sidewalk that Peter has outlined on figure 1, and no crosswalk at Richmond to cross to Normandy, and no connection to those houses on Normandy that are currently in the yellow boxes, 2260, 2270, and 2280. Just on the blue sidewalk, Your Worship, that's proposed in figure 1?
That's the way I understand it, correct, Mr. Mara? Yes.
Thank you, sir.
So we have a mover and a seconder on the recommendation that sidewalks be installed. On the motion, all in favor? 1, 2. Opposed? Oh, I'm sorry, there's Sue. Okay, so 4 opposed, 2 for. The motion is defeated. Thank you. Thank you, delegates, for your presentation. Have a great night. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Item E1, replacement Zamboni ice resurfacer. Is Mark with us?
So that does mean they're not doing it, right? Right?
I don't know.
They're not doing it?
Call Joe. I don't know. Call Joe.
Didn't they say that it was opposed, for opposed?
Yeah, for opposed. Doesn't that make sense?
I can take that report. The Zamboni, what's before you tonight.
Before you go, Peter, Crystal, Deputy Mayor, had her hand up.
Okay.
Sorry, I just have a quick question regarding that last report. Since it was opposed, my only question was, are we going to visit the option of possibly be putting in a pedestrian crosswalk, or is this just done?
Before you go there, I have a motion when meeting's over in relation to, we're going to do a Normandy sidewalk. I'm going to request a Normandy sidewalk under council questions in relation to come back with a report, because this is I don't like what's going on. So I'm going to ask Mr. Mara. I don't like asking him for reports, but we're having issues with sidewalks and trails all over a municipality, and they come with a recommendation and it doesn't follow through. So he's going to have to come up with a plan that we may disturb a lot more residents once his report comes back. I'm just guessing, but we talk about safety and sidewalks and we do agreements. And I think they leave puzzled because we're not doing what they're recommending. But at the end of the day, I will ask them for a report on sidewalks across all of Normandy after council meeting towards the end. So on this report for the Zamboni ice resurfacer, Mr. Mara.
Thank you. So the report before you tonight is to purchase a new Zamboni for the Walmart operations for the rinks. Before you tonight, the price is well below what was budgeted for. We did make use of the municipal membership Sourcewell, which is they do all the tendering process for various for the organization, and certainly all municipalities make use of this one-stop shop for various typical services that municipalities will use. So with that, the report before you tonight is to proceed with the purchase of the new Zamboni at a cost of $104,171.15 plus applicable taxes. With that, I have any questions, I'm available.
Thank you, Mr. Mazanovich. Mr. Akpata.
Through your worship, just for my consumption, Peter, the life of a Zamboni is how long? This is a question that I guess as a hockey person, I've always wanted to ask. And then what is also going to happen to our older Zamboni, sir, please?
It's a trade-in.
I believe the old Zamboni is part of a trade-in.
Trade-in?
We will be trading it in and getting rid of it, whether it's part of a trade-in or we'll put it on an auction site, a government run tonight, we will do one of the two things with respect to that. With respect to the life expectancy, we tend to get about 10 years. We use them pretty well at the Volmer, and we get about 10 years out of them before we really need to start to look at it. Plus, not to mention, technology changes and it provides a better outcome afterwards. So it's kind of that time frame of when that stuff occurs to upgrade.
And I guess just a supplementary to you, Peter, when we sell our equipment, do we, I understand how we're buying them collectively. Do we sell them collectively or individually? Or from your perspective, what gets the best return on our older equipment?
We do try to do trade-ins with vehicles and leave it at that. It's a little bit more difficult to do that with equipment types of aspects, Zambonis, shovels, dozers, graders. They're a bit harder to deal with trade-in values of those sorts of issues. So what we do make use of periodically is a website called Gov Deals. A lot of government organizations use those, and it's basically an auction site per se, where that you send in the information and it opens it up to people auctioning off the equipment. And so we use that periodically for disposal of the old equipment.
Thank you, Your Worship.
You're welcome. Did I see Ms. Desjardins' hand up? Yes. Move the motion. Moved by Councillor Desjardins, seconded by Councillor Adiccio Spagnolo. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Item E2, bylaw amendment, fire service establishing and regulating bylaw number 6073 as amended. Chief Sutton.
Thank you, Your Worship. This bylaw is intended to, or the change is intended to update our establishing and regulating bylaw to meet our current circumstances. In terms of the text, the wording that we're proposing is a very minor change, a couple words in one of the appendixes. The effect of that change in application is a change in capabilities and training levels from operations level to awareness level in our confined space rescue specialty capabilities. So for the reasons that I've laid out in the report, I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Council's pleasure. Councillor Renault.
You know, we talk about it at fire committee, you know, all the excessive work that has to go on with administration. You know, we've got things that we have to do for master plan, and there's all these things and the mice scurrying in the background. And this is one of those instances where the chief and administration has been working hard to make sure that all those other little things about the master plan that might not be as sexy as new buildings and new procedures. I appreciate this, and I will make the motion to receive.
Moved by Councillor Renault, second by Councillor Desjardins. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Item G1, October 2020 financial statement and financial reports for October. Obviously, I just said that. Council's pleasure. Deputy Mayor Malash, are you moving the motion? Motion to receive. Okay. And Councillor Renault, second. All in favor? Dale, you're off. Number 2, summary, or G2, summary of reports to council.
I'll move the report.
Moved by Councillor Renault, seconded by Deputy Mayor Malash. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. We have 4 bylaws on all 3 readings on the bylaws. Councillor Adiccio Spagnolo and Deputy Mayor Malash, all in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. Council questions. Mr. Militia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, just as a follow-up to the discussion and decision of council with respect to the Richmond sidewalk, administration is going to need some direction from council as to how to handle the requirement that was of the developer to construct the sidewalk. As part of the development agreement, the town exchanged lands to the developer to facilitate development in exchange for the construction of the sidewalk. So in order for us to be made whole, if you will, as part of that transaction, we're going to require some direction from council. Otherwise, it will be perceived that we've just given away land for free at this point. So we will need some direction from council, and I understand that the mayor is also considering a report to look at the entirety of Normandy, but I'll let him speak to that. But again, we will need something from council in terms of what you'd like us to do with respect to that.
Just a point of clarification, excuse me. Okay, I'm going to make my request for a sidewalk review of Normandy, east to west, the whole thing. Come back, we're going to have a master plan, and then we'll implement what they, well, I shouldn't say we'll implement, well, it'll be council's decision. So if Mr. Morrow, you can come back with a sidewalk review of Normandy, right from go here in Church all the way to, is it North Woodmont, I believe? Might as well do both sides of Malden, cover it all, and we might upset more people if we put sidewalks in there, but we'll do what is better for the municipality. So if you could do that, I'd appreciate it. And on Mr. Militia's point, council's pleasure. We have to do something, so I'll look at whoever wants to bring a motion forward, how you want to deal with that. Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you, Mayor Bondi. So I guess my question to you would be, if we're reviewing entire street of Normandy, how do we move forward with this small section? Wouldn't that all be part of a review?
Well, Richmond to
Would there be a way that we could,
Mr. Mara, he wants to answer your question. Is that okay, Crystal? If you answer what you've, okay.
Certainly with the mayor's question, we will look at the entirety of Normandy. If we bring something forward and council decides to proceed with something on Normandy, if this piece is built, it's something that the town didn't pay for. But if we resolve the developer of this, it's just something that the town will end up paying for from the general tax base. So that is ultimately what would happen in this location. Certainly, the motion failed to carry out what was proposed and approved, but certainly if council wishes to do the entirety of Normandy, means that we end up picking up the cost of what would be put in through what you see on that figure 1 as part of my report. So it just would have been cost that was not picked up at the town's cost. It is. So we just need some direction, because there, as Mr. Militia had noted, there is requirements to do it. It won't get built this year, regardless of what the decision of council would have been. Again, we're at late in the year, so it's going to have to all get pushed off to next year to catch the better weather to get to pour concrete out in the field. So. Certainly, with respect to the report, it's something that we will come back with and look at it at its entirety.
Deputy Mayor Malash.
So I guess my question would be, I know this was supposed to be done a couple years ago. If we were to hold off and wait for that extended report, is there a certain time frame for us to be able to take advantage of what was agreed upon in that original decision of who would pay for the sidewalk and the land donation? Like, is there a time frame we have to fall into for that?
I am going to refer to the solicitor. It appears as though council may have set it in motion that we have just resolved the developer of their agreement, but I don't know that standpoint. So certainly that would have to be something that we would have to look at through the solicitor. It just, again, they are going to know what this outcome was. And basically what's been proposed as part of the agreement has been denied and turned down by council. So I don't know where that puts us relative to still getting them to contribute.
Yeah, and I'll have to take a closer look at that agreement tonight and first thing tomorrow to kind of see what we what we can do there in terms of applying the securities in some way if there's a workaround there. But my mind is kind of echoing what Mr. Mara just said about how we enforce the use of those securities now if we don't have the go ahead at this point to use it towards that sidewalk. So I'll look into that further, and I'm not sure if that'll be an update for another council meeting or how we'll go about that, but I can certainly get to that for you guys.
Thank you, Dominic. Mr. Carrick.
So the one on Richmond should go in no matter what, because that wasn't, we were just basically the one that we weren't paying for, or there wasn't in the agreement was the 3 homes, but the other ones are there. So the one on Richmond, should that not automatically go in regardless of what happened on Normandy?
Councillor Carrick, the recommendation in the report was to proceed with constructing the sidewalk as per the agreement for the Richmond subdivision. What you saw in blue is what is proposed as part of the Richmond subdivision. That recommendation has been turned down, so there is now no sidewalk as part of Richmond subdivision, the way I am kind of understanding it. Certainly I look for clarification if that is my understanding. So I don't know how to move forward with that, but certainly our solicitor may be able to provide a bit of context relative to that.
Just secondly, so Sovereign would be off the table too then?
It appears because that was part of the requirement of the subdivision agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Desjardins. Oh, sorry, Mike, Dominic, before we go to you, Sue.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's what I'm going to look into in terms of if there's a way that we can separate the issue in terms of what was recommended tonight versus what's in the agreement and how we can go about that. So that's certainly where my starting point will be in terms of navigating this going forward.
Thank you. Councillor Desjardins.
Thanks. Dominic, you kind of jumped on what I was going to ask is if we can separate the sovereign side of the agreement and put the monies for the other in like a reserve of some description until it's solved, because it sounds like it's another case of the homeowners were not fully aware of what was going on with the sidewalks and so on, and we're being called to task for it. I'm finding these are very difficult decisions, and it's not a good place to be. But I do think that if we can, we should move forward with Sovereign and then find a reserve for the balance of the sidewalk fees. Just a thought.
No, I'm in agreement. I will try to find out a way to if we can do it, and if so, how. So I'll see what I can dig up for council and for administration in the next couple of days.
Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you. Yes, I'd appreciate that clarification, because I think what I thought we were focusing on was the 5 houses fronting on Normandy. I don't think we realized, or maybe I didn't for sure, was that the Richmond court as well as the Sovereign was going to be taken off the table as well. I assumed those were going no matter what. I thought we were more focusing on those 5 houses and getting a crossing over to Normandy. So I think maybe we could get some sort of clarification on that part of things, because in my opinion, I was looking at it going, okay, there's a sidewalk coming up Sovereign, a sidewalk coming up Richmond. Let's look at putting 2 crossings and getting them over to our trail system. So I think that I didn't realize those 2 pieces were actually in jeopardy if we weren't voting on that. So I think we need some sort of clarification on that piece of information. Again, these sidewalks do cause quite a headache for us here. And I understand the first 2 homes were part of the developer's agreement, but those other 3 homes have been there. Well, the Baches have been there since I was little. I grew up here and I remember the single house on Normandy down the dirt road. So they've been here long before, so they're not part of any agreement. So I think that's what we were focusing more on, were those 3 homes who weren't part of this, not the ones that were part of that subdivision agreement. So I don't know if there's a way to look at this a different way where it includes those sidewalks that I thought we were still getting. And it's unfortunate that I didn't realize that they were all one, and I don't know how to fix that.
Mr. Militia is going to take that one.
Certainly, I understand the question from the deputy mayor, and I think there are probably other members of council that also share that same question. I think at this point, again, the recommendation was that the sidewalks would be installed in accordance with the developer's agreement. That would include the ones that were in blue under figure 1. So that is where we sit today. If council wishes to reconsider that decision and make some sort of amendment, then that's the process we would need to follow. We need to follow that process in order to do that. And again, we're looking for direction in terms of how you'd like us to handle that, because we have a couple of things. Certainly, again, the solicitor will be looking at this in the coming days to see what our options are under the current agreement. But as you can, hopefully we have some options under the agreement, but it's difficult to negotiate after we both signed an agreement and indicate there's changes to it. So that is the crux that we're in at this point.
Councillor Ekpata.
Your worship, much like Deputy Mayor Malash, the question that I asked from my perspective was for the blue line coming down Richmond across Normandy, not to exclude Sovereign. I understand that a motion to reconsider requires 2/3 to get that back on the table. I don't want to see the Sovereign sidewalks in jeopardy. So if someone can advise me, I was on the side that voted against. One of the 4, if we make a motion to reconsider, can we get this back? Because your worship, I understand that you are looking at reviewing all of the sidewalks on Normandy. The intention of mine was not to jeopardize the Sovereign sidewalk, sir. If Mr. Militia can give me some direction, I'm more than happy to make a motion to reconsider.
Okay, so if you make a motion to reconsider, the 4 who opposed only can vote. Councillor Carrick and Councillor Reno cannot, because they voted against. Just on the motion to reconsider, correct? Once the motion has been brought forward, then we can all vote again. Is that clear?
I'm prepared to make a motion to reconsider, your worship.
Okay, Councillor Ekpata make a motion to reconsider, and Councillor Spagnuolo, Deputy Mayor Malash, and Councillor Desjardins vote in favor.
Right.
Yes.
The delegates are gone. Does that matter? It does, so we can't do this? Excuse me.
I'll await direction, your worship.
Okay, Mr. Militia is going to clarify this.
So again, the motion to reconsider is on the floor. And again, we just have to be cognizant of the fact that the delegates that appeared before council are I believe they're the 4 residents plus 1 representing another residence that live on Normandy. So we need to be cautious if, again, as we open up the motion to reconsider, theoretically, if council rescinds the previous motion and goes in a different direction, that will affect those 4 residents. And we would need to probably call them back to a subsequent meeting. If the direction from council is not affecting those property owners, then I believe we have enough leeway to move forward with those particular sidewalks, both on Sovereign and on Richmond.
Is that crystal clear, Councillor Ekpata?
Yes, your worship. What I'd like to do then, again, is my intent was not to eliminate the Sovereign sidewalk. It was not. Seeking some direction from Mr. Militia. If we do a motion to reconsider and then stand the motion down and then pass that, and then stand further proceedings down to let the homeowners who are affected know that we've reconsidered the motion. I want to just make sure that we do everything appropriately and properly, sir. And
if that is the will of council at this point, I would suggest that that you bring forward a motion to reconsider the motion, and we bring that forward to a subsequent council meeting and invite those folks back. And then
Yes,
we
sir.
can have the full discussion at that point, if that's what the intention is.
That is the intention, sir. Thank you, Mr. Militia.
Okay, so moved by Councillor Sadak, second by Councillor Dicho Spagnolo. All in favor? Motion passes. Thank you. Now open up to council questions. Councillor Carrick.
Through your worship, are you going to talk about the sidewalks tonight still or not?
No, that'll be deferred to another meeting.
Okay, then can I just ask for a council report possibly from the administration that sidewalks and that stuff, is it even feasible, does not come before council? Those are decisions that are made in agreements and through the town and what goes on. So we've been dealing with this forever. Nobody wants a sidewalk, no matter what we do, whether it's been there or not supposed to be there. They always come forward and they don't want it. So it's just the way it is. We want to connect the town and make it safer for pathways and walks, etc. Then is it possible to look at a policy where stuff like that doesn't even come to council and that stuff is taken care of as we move forward? So they say, you know what, it's out of our hands, it's going in.
Mr. Militia is going to take that one.
Again, I understand what the premise of the report would be, or the comment or the policy would be. I think from where we sit today, again, we have a policy currently in terms of pedestrian safety. And so that is what effectively allows us to go forward and put sidewalks in front of homes that don't have sidewalks, regardless of whether they're part of a developer's agreement or not. The difficulty we have is that we have that policy now, and as what is happening is homeowners are disagreeing with the policy and want to come to council and argue that, and they have that right to do that. So I don't believe that this would be a this is an item that you can delegate to administration to avoid that process. I believe that the homeowners and residents will always have that right to come in front of council and ask for an exemption or change to the policy. So I'm not sure. We can do some investigation and we can report back, but again, from what I understand, I don't believe that we will be able to fulfill what I think your intention is that we have a policy, we're standing by the policy, and deviations from the policy will not be considered by council. I think that's where you're trying to get to, but I'm not sure that legally we were able to do that.
Okay, so I'm just saying, because the city of Windsor, I watch their council meetings and I never see sidewalk issues come up. So I don't know if they deal with that at a different committee level or whatever, but I just, so that maybe we want to start look there.
We will investigate further.
Any other council questions? Councillor Reno.
Thank you, Your Worship. Since the last meeting, this has been a very exciting time in our province. And look at Joe's already smiling. He knows where I'm going with this. You know, we're all learning about colors, about green and yellow and orange, red and gray. And I was just wondering if, Joe, could you, for the thousands of people that are watching this tonight, I was wondering if you could give a little update as to where we're sitting in regards to our current orange status and what that means in the community, just so that we have a good understanding amongst us all.
So bear with me just for a second as I take a stroll down memory lane. A few weeks ago, we were in the green category, and the province moved our region to yellow. At that time, I believe it was the same day or the following day, the local health unit imposed some additional restrictions, which effectively put us somewhere in between yellow and orange. And that was what had occurred, I believe, 2 Fridays ago. This past Friday, the province has moved the region into orange. So we are now fully into orange as opposed to partially into orange as we were. And that took effect on Monday. The movement, quite frankly, from yellow to orange, again, from a municipal operation perspective, doesn't have a significant impact. It does have an impact on other aspects of our of life, if you will, or the community. But in terms of services that we provide, does not have a significant impact. Where the more significant impact occurs is if and when we get to the stage red or level red. that's when we will see more impacts again to our operations. And probably most significant in our operation is the reduction in capacity limits from currently 25 down to 10. And so that is, again, at the Volmer at this point. Again, for all intents and purposes, we're allowed 25 people within Town Hall, but realistically, our traffic level within Town Hall, we would never, even under non-COVID situations, have 25 people per activity here in Town Hall. We probably would not exceed that at one point in time, except for perhaps a large council meeting. So from that perspective, that's where we sit right now. I will say that, again, the conditions here locally are worsening. I know the local medical officer of health is trying to alert folks to understand what our local conditions are and try to be mindful of all the recommendations both the province and he has put forward here locally. Again, it seems as though we do have some rapid spread. These are levels that we probably have not seen in the entire pandemic where we are today. So in saying that, we are interested in seeing what our next steps are, again, and how the local medical officer of health is perceiving what level we're at, as well as the provincial table as well. Again, given where we are currently, unfortunately, it is on an increasing caseload basis, and that does not bode well for the region with respect to what our current levels are. Again, these are decisions that are made at the provincial table and through the health unit as well, so it's not like we have much of an impact on that. We have instituted more restrictions here, and we will continue to do that through kind of our operations, but we will continue to be guided by the province and the local medical officer of health with respect to the recommendations that we have. Again, we hope that, again, there is some promising news, again, with vaccine development, and they're looking at the effective ways to deploy that. But to be frank, again, at best, those in most significant need may get something later in December or early in the year. The population-wide vaccination program is probably not likely until a couple months into the new year. Again, but if you want to read the reports that they're trying to work through. So it is, again, an unfortunate situation where we find ourselves. We really encourage folks to get educated, to look at, again, the medical professionals. And I know that, unfortunately, sometimes there are some diversions of opinions, but again, the local medical officer of health, their responsibility is for public health. And I would encourage folks to look at those recommendations that the Windsor-Essex County Health Unit has put forward, as well as what's happening on the provincial and the national levels as well. Again, we hope, like everyone else, I think we all are suffering from a bit of COVID fatigue, and we're all wondering what Christmas is going to look like for all of us, including our families and the holiday seasons. But again, we all need to be conscious of the recommendations, and some of them are quite simple in terms of proper hand washing and sanitation of hands, as well as wearing masks, limiting exposure and keeping proper distance, proper sneezing and coughing etiquette. And that's really, again, those are some basic things that the health unit is trying to do, things that every one of us can do in terms of our part. It is a difficult balance, I will say. Again, we struggle with some of the balances here locally, and I can imagine that when at the provincial table, when trying to balance the health side of things with the economic side of things, it's not an easy endeavor, and I'm sure there's some difficult conversations that are happening at that level as well. So I don't know if there's anything more specific, Councillor Reno, you'd like me to answer or comment on, but again, we are making changes here locally within our municipal operations to try to protect more, both from our staff perspective, from our visitors, patrons, and residents in general. And we do encourage on all sides to follow the recommendations coming out of the local health unit and the provincial health table as well.
Thanks, Joe. I wasn't looking for a lot. I just want there to be a general understanding out in the public. There were some comments made to me that were rather derogatory, saying that all the council wants to do is shut down the Volmer. And I mean, I couldn't even respond to that because I mean, we don't want to see our kids not be able to play. We don't want to not have places for our families to go. But the fact of the matter is that there's bigger players in the field, and you know, this is beyond us, and we're doing our best to live by the rules. And I appreciate what you've told us. I appreciate your small little caveat about what changes with red, and the gathering limits indoors with red is something that people need to understand in case that day comes. Thank you.
Thanks for the question, Councillor Reno. It's not an easy decision, and once people get informed of who makes the decision, they realize it's not us. We're enforcing the decisions that are put down on us. Any other council questions? Statements by council members. Councillor Akpata.
I will follow in the footsteps of my friend, Mr. Reno, sir. I spent a lot of time at the Volmer as a trainer for a junior hockey team, and I wanted to bring my deepest appreciation to the staff there. We have a very young staff, as it's been pointed out to me. I'm graying over this pandemic, and I see nothing but professionalism and politeness. I've seen and heard of some, and I use the word small c, confrontations or disagreements about the interpretation of COVID rules. And one of the things that I've heard, or never heard, sir, is that our staff have been inappropriate, rude, or demeaning. Folks may not agree with the interpretations that our staff enforce as set down by the province, but surely, please, I would like to make sure that all of our staff, regardless of whether they're full-time, part-time, younger, or older, are aware of the work that they are doing. I'm sure that some people never signed up to be watching numbers of people gathering and things of that nature, but I appreciate the work that they're doing because candidly, I spend time at the Volmer. My children spend time at the Volmer. I've watched the disinfecting go on, and I'm pleased that our folks are taking the health and safety of the community so seriously. So thanks to all of them, Your Worship, from a hockey parent.
Thank you for those comments, Councillor Akpata. CAO and I had a meeting on Monday because I spent some time this weekend incognito at the Volmer complex to see what's going on with whom, and I have nothing but praise for. I met 5 new staff members, and they told me what they did and how they did it, and there's some confrontation, but very, very minimal. It seems to be repeat offenders, and we'll see what code red does. And if we go to code red, we go to code gray, possibly. That's basically back to stage 1. And there won't be any issues at the Volmer because we will not be able to keep it open if we go down to 10 people on the ice, or at least the way it is presently. So thanks for the comments. I have nothing but praise for our staff. Councillor Desjardins.
Thank you. On that note, I'm just going to say the same thing. This is one of those cases, folks, where we're the messengers of the bad news, and we're just trying to keep everybody safe. And I really am positive that for the most part, our people understand. You've got a few all the time that will maybe take things to an extreme and be a little fussy about it. But I know for the most part, our staff are doing a great job. We're the messenger of the bad news. And unfortunately, that's something we have to live with right now. And I think further down the road, we're going to be the messenger of the good news, and we're going to be back to wide open and doing things the way we want to be able to do them.
Thank you, Councillor Desjardins. Reports from committees. Notices of motion. Conformatory bylaw. First reading, Councillor Reno and Deputy Mayor Meloche. All in favor? That carries. Second reading, Councillor Dicho Spagnolo and Councillor Akpata. All in favor? That carries. Third and final reading, Councillor Carrick and Councillor Desjardins. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. You have the schedule of meetings. We'll be going on the budgets. Everybody, I think, received their copy today. Happy reading, and we'll be discussing that on the 16th and 17th. Yes. Enjoy your evening. Thank you, viewing audience. Hope you enjoyed